There's a strange gap between people who grew up in the 1970s and those born after the 2000s. Not just a generational gap, a psychological one. You can feel it when they talk, when they handle problems, when something goes wrong and they don't panic. People who grew up in the 70s carry a mindset that feels almost foreign today. Not because they're smarter, not because they're stronger by nature, but because they were shaped by a world that no longer exists. A childhood with silence instead of notifications, freedom instead of supervision, real consequences instead of safety nets. And that childhood quietly rewired how they think, trust, argue, love, and survive. People who grew up in the 1970s were raised in a world with almost no supervision by today's standards. If you disappeared for 5 hours, nobody freaked out. There were no phones, no GPS, no way to check in. You had a bicycle, a few friends, and one loose rule: be home before it gets dark. And even that rule was negotiable. Psychologically, this did something powerful. It created a deep internal confidence, not taught, not explained, just built through experience. People from the 70s still carry this quiet inner voice that says, "I'll figure it out." Even when they don't know how, even when they're unsure, even when things feel messy. That mindset didn't come from motivation or self-help. It came from necessity. But to truly understand the psychology of the 1970s generation, you have to look at the generation before them. Most of their parents lived through World War II or were born right after it. They knew real fear, real hunger, real uncertainty. Those parents didn't talk much about emotions. They didn't complain. They didn't explain themselves. They survived. And that survival mindset leaked into the household without a single lesson being taught. That's why people from the 70s matured early. Responsibility wasn't something they learned in a class. It was something they inhaled at home. You helped with things. You fixed things. You figured things out. If something broke, you didn't replace it. You repaired it. If something went wrong, you didn't panic. You adapted. They didn't grow up believing, "Someone will come save me." The help was you. And this is the part people often forget. The world they lived in demanded a backbone. They watched their parents work long hours without talking about burnout. They saw neighbors help each other quietly. No posts, no photos, no applause. They saw adults carry the weight of life without turning it into a performance. That environment shapes a child. It teaches you that life is serious, but manageable, that problems are normal, that responsibility isn't a punishment. It's part of being alive. People raised in the 70s became dependable because they had no other option. And that's why even today, they often feel older than their age. Not physically, mentally. Their maturity didn't come from books or advice. It came from watching real life up close, unfiltered, undistracted. There's something almost poetic about this generation. They were the bridge. One foot in a slow, raw, analog world, and one foot in a fast, loud, digital one. They remember life before the internet, before screens, before constant noise. And now they're watching a generation grow up, drowning in it. Maybe that's why talking to someone from that era feels different. They're grounded, present, not trying to impress you, not trying to win an invisible competition. Their confidence doesn't come from validation. It comes from childhood struggles, early responsibility, and figuring things out the hard way. They're a reminder of something simple. Strength isn't taught, it's tested. Now look at the generation born after the 2000s. They grew up with phones in their hands before they could even speak properly. Notifications, videos, messages, timelines. Their brains have been running at full speed since childhood, and you can see the effects everywhere. They get tired faster, overwhelmed easier. Their attention disappears in seconds, not because they're weak, but because their minds are absorbing more information in one day than someone in the 70s saw in an entire week. Social media gives them connection, but it also gives them pressure. They compare themselves constantly, often without realizing it. They feel behind even when they're doing fine. Their brains never fully rest because the phone never stops asking for attention. Even when they're relaxing, they're scrolling, and scrolling isn't rest. This generation is smart, creative, open-minded, but also mentally drained, overstimulated, and emotionally exhausted in ways older generations never had to face. They're growing up in a world that moves faster than the human brain was designed for, and they're trying to survive it. one notification at a time. So here's the real question. Which generation do you think had it harder, and why? And tell me this, were you born before 1980 or after? I want to know which world shaped you. If this made you see things differently, hit subscribe. We go deeper every day. Don't forget to like the video. It helps more people find messages like this.